Okay, here's another video. This is going to be beef stew. So this makes it look like there's a lot of ingredients. Well, there's about maybe 6 or 7 or 8 things, but I haven't measured them out yet. And I'll do that later, but this is really a 2-part recipe, and you'll understand that later. But the ingredients are salt, balsamic vinegar, bay leaf, sugar, fresh ground black pepper, tomato paste. Behind there, that's thyme, olive oil, potatoes, onions, garlic, carrots, broth, flour, and wine. It's Cabernet. Doesn't matter what kind though, just a good red wine. Good meaning not expensive in this case. But, okay. So what wasn't in the ingredients is stew meat. I think this is probably chuck or something, you know, something that's a little bit tough, and then it works well for stew because you cook it for such a long time. But we just buy this, but you could buy chuck roast and cube it like this. They're about, about 1 inch to 1.5 inch chunks. And then we took 2 teaspoons of salt and 1 teaspoon of fresh ground black pepper and just mixed it in there to cover it evenly. And next, I put the burner on about medium. This is kind of different on every stove, but the idea is to sear the meat in olive oil, and you don't want to use too high of a heat. And I'm going to do it in 3 separate batches, because if you put it all in the same pan at the same time, according to the recipe, it steams it and it's kind of mushy and it's not as good of a result. So there I go. Okay, I'm going to start with about a tablespoon of olive oil. In each batch I'm going to add another tablespoon of olive oil, a little more. Wait for that to heat up, and then I'll start cooking the meat. Okay, before I start the beef, the oil's heating up, I'm going to just point out what I'm putting in here. That's about 1.5 teaspoons of thyme, 2 tablespoons of balsamic vinegar, 1 bay leaf. That's the sugar down there. I think that was, it's about 2 teaspoons. About 1.5 tablespoons of tomato paste, and that's about a 1/4 cup of flour, 4 or 5 garlic cloves just smashed with the flat end of a knife, and that is 2 cups of red wine, and this is broth. 2 cups of broth, 2 cups of water. And over here, these are the carrots. I've just kind of cut these like this down the middle, and then tried to make approximately about 1 inch chunks. Size doesn't matter all that much. Okay, the heat is on a little bit more than medium. We're using about 1.5 or 2.5 pounds of the beef chunk, and I put it in there after the pan was already heated, and I'm just going to leave those undisturbed. I'm going to brown them on each side. Okay, this is that first batch. After about 1.5 to 2 minutes, I turned it. I turned the temperature down just a little bit so the stuff on the bottom doesn't get too dark. It's actually an important part of it too. But I'll say that later. And this is still got, I put the timer on for about 5 minutes. This has still got about 2 minutes to go. Okay, second batch, adding a little more oil as I go along. See that stuff at the bottom, that brown stuff? So that's perfectly okay. I try to control the temperature so it doesn't get too dark. But when I add the balsamic and the onions and the garlic and stir, it's going to come right off the bottom, and that is a big part of the flavor, and mainly the reason that we're browning the beef to begin with. Okay, so look at the bottom of the pan. See how much dark stuff is on there. I kind of try to control the temperature so it's brown and not too dark. I'm putting it kind of up and down a little bit just to control it, and I'm going to remove that very quickly in about 30 seconds. Okay, so it's done. I'm going to take it out. Okay. Put it onto a plate. Okay, pretty quickly. I'm going to put the onions in to the silver pan. I'm also going to put the garlic in there and the balsamic. I'm going to go ahead and stir the bottoms as I do this. Let's change up the camera. So you see how it's coming off. I'm going to cook these for about another 5 minutes. If it all doesn't come off, that's okay, because I'm going to put the wine in there and the broth. It'll all come up. It's all coming up actually. It always makes me nervous because you don't think it's going to, but it actually, the balsamic mix takes it right off, and then the onions do too. So I'm going to cook these onions for about 5 minutes, and then I'll add the other ingredients. Okay, it's been about 5 minutes. That's what it looks like. And now I'm going to add the tomato paste. I'm just going to stir this in there just for a few seconds here. I think I'm going to put a little bit more oil into it. A little dried onion. Okay, I put the meat back in there. Now I'm going to sprinkle it with the flour. I'm just going to stir it until the flour is absorbed. Okay, there it is. Now it's ready for all the rest of the ingredients. So there goes the wine. There goes the broth, 2 cups of broth and 3 cups of water. The bay leaf, the sugar, and the thyme. Okay, I forgot to mention, so the oven is preheated to 325. Okay, I mixed it, kind of scraped the bottom with the spoon, just kind of feeling. And now I'm going to bring that to a boil, and then I'm going to cover it and put it in the oven for 2 hours. Covered. And put it in the oven for 2 hours. Okay, now I brought it to a boil, and I'm going to put the lid on, turn that off. Scoop this over here, and put it in the oven at 325 for 2 hours. Okay, set a timer for 2 hours. Alright, and that's all there is to it. The cool thing about this recipe, it's kind of divided into 2 separate things. So what's left now after 2 hours, I'll take it out and I'll put the potatoes and the carrots in there. And I'll cook it for another 2 hours, and then it will be ready to go. But it's much better if you wait until the next day to serve this, so everything can kind of break down. It just tastes better. I just want to correct myself. I said 2 hours on the potatoes and carrots, but that's wrong. It's 2 hours for what I just did. And then when I take it out, I'll put the chopped up carrots and potatoes in there for about another hour until they're tender, and then it's ready to go. Okay, it's been 2 hours, so I'm going to open this up and take it out and then put in the last ingredients. So this is 1 pound of potatoes. So I just cut them up into the chunks of potatoes that I'd like to, well, I'm not going to eat it, but what I think would be good in there. And also about 4 really big carrots. Okay, we're going to put them in there. All right. Here goes the carrots. Here goes the potatoes. Now I'm just going to push them down into the liquid like that. Make sure everything's covered. Oops. Put the lid back on. Put it back in the oven. 1 hour. And that's it, just one last step. Well, we had a delivery just as this was coming out of the oven, so I didn't get a chance to show you one last step. So this is what it finally looks like. You know, the flour thickens the sauce to a certain degree, but they like it a little bit thicker, and that's how I liked it too when I was a kid. It's kind of a gravy, but a thin gravy, and then, you know, it's going to cool, so it'll be even thicker than that. So what I did is I took a little bit of potato starch and I combined it with water, and then I started adding it until we got something closer to the consistency that we like. So looks like this right now, but it's extremely hot. when it cools it'll be thicker, and that will sit on top of the rice and kind of fall through it at the same time. And that's it. The potatoes and the carrots and everything are all tender, and the beef is super tender, and this gravy is really flavorful. Remember, it had wine and beef broth in it, onions, and balsamic vinegar and pepper and lots of stuff. So that's it. That wraps another video.